In order to be a great actor, you have to be able to take big risks. Unfortunately, those risks aren't always going to pay off. Despite their best efforts, these celebrities turned in performances that some film fans are still upset about to this day. It isn't necessarily George Clooney's fault that he got stuck with what many call the worst Batman movie, 1997's Batman and Robin, for his debut outing as The Dark Knight. After all, it's hard to imagine that any actor could manage to bring gravitas to a version of the hero with rubber nipples on his suit and a signature credit card. Of course, you can't blame the critical failure of Batman and Robin solely on a lousy script and some silly costumes. The man in the cape and cowl has to bear at least a little responsibility. Even though Clooney would go on to earn multiple Oscar nominations for his acting, he somehow struggled in his efforts to portray a charming playboy. Both comic book fans and professional critics found themselves disappointed by his version of Bruce Wayne. As reviewer Joe Morgenstern wrote for the Wall Street Journal, of all modern Batmans, George Clooney bears the closest physical resemblance to the comic book hero. But there isn't much to say about his performance because there isn't much performance to discuss.
And you are?
Batgirl.
That's not awfully PC. What about bad person or bad woman?
In Clooney's defense, he spent the better part of 3 decades apologizing for the movie and his lackluster performance in it. But that still doesn't completely forgive the role he played in tanking the live-action Batman franchise so hard that it had to take an 8-year vacation. If you're going to remake a movie, the expectation is usually that you're going to do something at least a little different with it. Otherwise, it's the cinematic equivalent of just tracing an existing drawing, and the tracing is never going to look as sharp as the original. This is all especially true for a movie that is already perfect the way it is, like Alfred Hitchcock's trailblazing 1960 horror classic Psycho. And yet, director Gus Van Sant decided to do that very thing in 1998 when he did a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho. He went as far as using the original screenplay rather than commissioning a new one. Unsurprisingly, the vast majority of critics declared the entire exercise to be utterly pointless, doing nothing to elevate the original or even distinguish itself from it in any meaningful way. Perhaps the worst element of all was Vince Vaughn's version of Norman Bates, the character played flawlessly by actor Anthony Perkins in the original. Dramatic acting has never been Vaughn's strong suit, and it's easy to assume that he's trying to be funny as he tries and fails to play the unsettling innkeeper.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Haven't you?
By the time Vaughn is revealed in his blonde wig and bathrobe, everything has completely fallen apart. The only people who weren't laughing were the producers who bankrolled the train wreck of a film, as it made just $37.2 million on a $60 million budget. Les Misérables is one of the most popular and long-running Broadway musicals of all time. So when it was announced that the tragic tale of revolution would be adapted into a feature film, expectations were high. Some fans weren't sure that Hollywood actors would be able to do justice to a story in which nearly every line of dialogue is sung rather than spoken. But Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway's award-winning performances proved the naysayers wrong. Well, mostly wrong. For the role of Javert, the police inspector whose blind devotion to the law sets the plot into motion, Russell Crowe was cast. The star of numerous critical successes, including Gladiator and A Beautiful Mind, Crowe is an undeniably talented actor. But when it comes to singing, he's no virtuoso. The fact that the singing in Les Misérables was done live rather than inside a recording studio only made things more challenging for him. Unfortunately, Crowe's flat notes and strained delivery ended up proving distracting during a handful of intense and heartbreaking moments. Some reviewers didn't mince words. As Kimberly Jones wrote for the Austin Chronicle, when Les Misérables is good, it is very, very good, and when it is bad, it's usually because Russell Crowe has opened his mouth. As famous as Mike Myers is, the iconic actor has actually starred in a relatively small number of movies as the main lead. This is due in no small part to Myers' total commitment to his original characters, and the results speak for themselves. Wayne Campbell, Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, and Shrek are some of the most iconic movie characters of the 1990s and 2000s. Few other comedic performers can claim that many genre-defining figures. It's not entirely fair to hold Myers' bizarre performance as a title character in 2003's A Cat in the Hat against Myers, as he was forced to take on the project to make amends for a contract dispute over his pulling out of a movie based on his SNL character, Dieter. But the Love Guru was his and his alone, based on a character he came up with that was turned into a script he co-wrote.
I love my job!
It would have already been disappointing enough for an actor with a less impressive track record of original characters to churn out a true weirdo like Guru Maurice Pitka. But the fact that it came from Myers is all the more dumbfounding. There's nothing funny about Pitka's offensive Indian caricature, and nothing he says or does comes anywhere close to redeeming the character's racist foundations. It's easy to spend the entire runtime of The Love Guru wondering how Myers convinced himself that anyone was going to like it. It makes sense that a former child star would want to move on to more mature projects as an adult. That's why 3 years after graduating from the teen sitcom Saved by the Bell, Elizabeth Berkley took center stage for one of the most infamous theatrical events in film history. Showgirls was the first movie rated NC-17 to receive a wide release, and it was so poorly received that there's never been another one since. It's safe to say that the cultural response to the sexual content of Showgirls was a bit of an overreaction. Almost overnight, Berkley found herself under fire by everyone from concerned parents to talk show hosts. Berkley's career was permanently derailed for the crime of turning in a campy performance as the ambitious dancer, Nomi Malone.
Nice dress.
Thanks. It's a Versace.
It's Versace.
What?
Berkley had to have known that taking the lead in such a risque project would result in controversy, but she couldn't have possibly predicted just how intense the blowback would end up being. The fact that she seemed to be taking her role extremely serious in media appearances didn't do her any favors, leaving public opinion of the young actor in an unfortunate state by the time Showgirls left theaters. Thankfully, that's not where the story ends. In the decades after its release in 1995, Showgirls has developed a cult following, with fans who appreciate Berkley's over-the-top performance and prefer laughing with her to laughing at her. When a television series that debuted in 1949 has more progressive casting than a major studio film released in 2013, that's a serious problem. In the Lone Ranger TV series that ran for 5 seasons before ending in 1957, an indigenous Canadian named Jay Silverheels played the title character's Native American sidekick, Tonto. It was a surprisingly inclusive decision during an era in which white actors frequently played characters of color, and nobody batted an eye about it. Unfortunately, in Disney's 2013 film adaptation of the property, Tonto was played by Johnny Depp. As if the white Depp playing a Native American character wasn't bad enough, this version of Tonto was even more of an ethnic caricature than the 1950s version, complete with face paint and a dead bird for a headdress, and a very cliched manner of speaking. Given Depp's executive producer credit and tendency to exert creative control over his characters, along with the fact that he was Disney's golden boy during that era, it's hard not to assume that all of these offensively baffling choices came directly from him. Critic Stephen Marsh had an even stronger take, writing for Esquire. Depp is a courageous actor who takes big risks, which sometimes pay off magnificently and sometimes end in disaster. The decision to play Tonto falls into the latter category. It's the kind of artistic failure that makes you question not just the movie and everyone involved in making it, but the entire culture that produced it. Zoolander was a hit in 2001, with its memorable jokes and lovable characters turning the film into a modern comedy classic. Unfortunately for director, writer, producer, and star Ben Stiller, audiences weren't nearly as kind when he decided to return to the dark world of male modeling with Zoolander 2. Stiller obviously bears most of the blame for the movie's 20% audience approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but nobody forced Benedict Cumberbatch to accept the role of an offensively written non-binary model named All. Cumberbatch's casting was a source of backlash before Zoolander 2 was even released, as a joke featured in the trailer made it clear from the start that All's identity would be used as a punchline.
All is not defined by binary constructs.
That's cool, I don't like labels either. But I think he's asking, do you have a hot dog or a bun?
Reflecting on the controversy years later, Cumberbatch agreed that a non-binary actor should have played the role instead of him. He also claimed that he saw All's presence in the movie as a way to point out how out of touch the other characters were, and that they were supposed to be the ones being laughed at rather than All. Even if this is completely true, his performance is one of many elements that make Zoolander 2 a difficult watch. It's hard to believe Quentin Tarantino for wanting to make cameos in his own movies, even if they tend to be a bit distracting. Nevertheless, he's been doing them from the very beginning, as he delivered a scene-stealing monologue as Mr. Brown in his debut film Reservoir Dogs. Anyone who had watched that particular movie probably wasn't surprised to see Tarantino make another appearance in his sophomore feature, Pulp Fiction. That said, they probably were surprised to hear what was coming out of his mouth. Tarantino plays Jimmy Dimmick, a Los Angeles homeowner who finds himself in a predicament when local hitmen Jules and Vincent arrive at his door covered in blood. They have a body that they need to hide, but Jimmy makes it emphatically clear that they won't be hiding it on his property, perhaps a bit too clear. What follows is an explicit rant featuring several of the hardest R's ever uttered by a white man in modern cinema history. The moment isn't particularly well acted by Tarantino, but it's clear that he enjoyed filming this scene a little too much. While Pulp Fiction is still considered a must-watch movie, lots of people would have preferred it if Tarantino had stayed behind the camera. Two of the actors who have played the Joker on the big screen, Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix, won Academy Awards for their respective portrayals. Jack Nicholson didn't get an Oscar nomination, but that's mostly because comic book movies still struggle to be recognized as legitimate cinema in 1989. Nevertheless, he was nominated for a Golden Globe and a BAFTA. As for another certain someone who tried to bring Gotham City's clown prince of crime to life, nobody objected when award nominations didn't come rolling in for Jared Leto's Take. When the cast list for Suicide Squad was made public in December 2014, fans were curious to see what Oscar-winning actor Jared Leto would do in the role of Batman's most iconic villain. That said, any hope that he would deliver an impressive performance was shattered when the first image of the character was released a few months later. Mr. J's metal teeth and tattoos instantly made him a laughingstock across the internet.
Are you sweet-talking me? I love this guy.
When Suicide Squad finally hit theaters in August of 2016, everyone's worst fears were confirmed. Leto's blinged-out urban crime lord vibe fell massively flat compared to the likes of Ledger and Nicholson. Suicide Squad was widely panned, and 2019's Joker soon made Leto's look even worse by comparison.